In a world filled with information, where do you turn to get straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Lock it in to the longest running financial talk show in Arkansas and let us help you build the bridge between information and application. Real financial change begins right here, and it starts with you.
It's showtime! Woo!
Hey, on today's show, in the spirit of the Summer Olympics, the training and discipline it takes to get to the medal stand. It can be motivating to you in your quest for financial independence. We're measuring milestones on today's show.
This is the Get Ready for the Future show.
And welcome in, everybody. Good morning. It is the Get Ready for the Future show. My name is Scott Inman, along with me, John Shrewsbury and Teresa Arago. As we get in the Olympic spirit, of course, the opening ceremonies last Friday night, and things are in full swing in Tokyo now, and it is a special time. I think there's a little extra pride if you're an American during this time as Team USA competes. What's your Olympic sport? What's the one you like to watch the most?
Tennis.
Tennis.
Yes.
Yeah, you're a tennis guy.
I am a tennis guy.
Yeah.
I used to be a tennis guy. I'm an old tennis guy now.
Yeah.
Former tennis guy.
So you don't get enough of that during the year. You still like it in Olympics too?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the most interesting thing to me, because I played the sport at one particular point in time. But I think that there's a lot, as you said, there's a lot of interest there. I do this kind of drive-by thing because it's so long. It just takes forever to really know what's going on. So I just kind of check in on it every once in a while and kind of see how we're doing. I like the medal standings that the media has kind of basically created and said, okay, well, here's where everybody stands, and as long as we're beating everybody, then I'm good.
You're good. So you're just checking to see that flag, that the national anthem's played. That's
right.
all you really want to know.
That's it.
Well, I think the unusual sports is where I kind of dig in. There's sports there, Teresa, that we never see and never care about any other time except when the Olympics come around.
Yeah, Chad works with me in the Conway office. We were looking at the list of sports that go into that, and there were several of them we were going, really? That's a thing? And one of the things was there's a 3-on-3 basketball, which I thought is just the way you play street ball, but apparently that's a thing. So even at the Olympics, and he said it was pretty rough watching the other night that they were playing a lot like street ball in that too. So I was like, ooh, no blood, no foul. Okay, I can go there. That's about the only way I can play basketball because I'm not that good. So I just waylay everybody I'm playing with.
Good to know. Yes. Do not play basketball with Teresa. Good to know.
Well, did you know I was watching the other night and surfing was on. They were they actually weren't showing the competition. They were showing that an American surfer had won the gold medel, but I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
It was even an Olympic sport, but they've entered surfing, and then they've added. They're always adding events to existing sports. I like to watch swimming, and Katie Ledecky won last night the 1500.
That is
They've added
long swim.
Took 15 minutes for them to finish this race, John. Can you imagine 15 minutes of swimming, and not just swimming, but racing?
Yeah.
No.
So I can tell you, when I was back in my lifeguarding days, we had to swim a 1,500-meter swim as part of our final exam to get it, but we only had to we took 30, 45 minutes. We couldn't stop, but we definitely were not going that fast. So I can't imagine getting that done in 15 minutes.
Well, when you think about how amazing these athletes are, and they certainly have immense raw talent, but it's the training, it's the discipline, it's the sacrifice. Speaking of swimming, Michael Phelps once told ESPN that he eats roughly 8,000 to 10,000 calories a day. Now, I could probably do that, but I wouldn't.
I tried that, but I didn't look like him. That's weird.
That sounds pretty easy, actually, when you think about it. But he eats lots of pizza and pasta, and he routinely eats foods like fried egg sandwiches, and that's just the eating part of it, because he's burning that all off, right? I mean, but the sacrifice and the discipline it takes to be an Olympic athlete, it doesn't quite take that to reach financial independence, but I think that's kind of our jumping off point today is there are similarities. You can mirror that. It is not going to be easy. Nobody wakes up wanting to be an Olympic athlete and just kind of haphazardly goes through the training and gets there.
You don't just roll it out there.
No.
You've got to have a lot of discipline, and financial independence is really the same thing. And I think oftentimes we don't want to think about the fact that our progress up the ladder, if you will, on financial independence really does equate to how much financial discipline we have with the things that we're doing. And, you can take anything to an extreme. And if you look at the life of an Olympic athlete, you have to say that that's extreme.
Yes.
That they go through a lot of stuff to be able to just have a chance at that 15 seconds of fame or whatever the case may be. But I think it's a lot easier to reach a comfortable level of financial independence. You don't have to just 100% totally change your life. I think you can make a lot of good progress and get to a very comfortable level of financial independence by employing some discipline, but not to the extreme.
Yeah, and the thing that always amazes me too is that they never seem to make mistakes. And then when you watch, for instance, like that swimming race last night, the announcers already pretty much know what's going to happen. Like occasionally there is a shocker, but why do you think that is? It's because these times that they record over and over again, they've measured, they've had milestones. They know this is what we did last time. You're going to work harder. You're going to sacrifice. You're going to get an extra second off your time in the case of swimming. They know that going in how they're going to perform because they've measured the milestones along
the way they've tweaked it.
Yep.
As they've learned themselves, as they've learned their sport, they're tweaking it constantly. And that's something that kind of relates to financial independence too, is that you know where you are today and you've got to make tweaks. You've got to make changes a little bit along the way to get where you want to go and to refine your goals too.
Well, and I think that we have tried to create something here at GenWealth that actually does speak to that and recognizes that and helps that. If you go to our website, you will actually see almost a progression of financial independence from Money Guide to Money Works to Ready to Retire. It is really a life cycle type thing that we are doing here at GenWealth to help all stages of life as far as your finances are concerned. If you're just getting started, I know, Teresa, you and Mark have launched a podcast called Talking Sense, and it really is directed to those people who are just getting started with their finances.
Yes, to me, I think it's not just those who are just getting started, but if financial education isn't something that was part of your family conversation, which for many wasn't, I know for me it wasn't, this is an opportunity to learn about topics that affect you now, not necessarily retirement fully focused like this program is, but it also deals with day-to-day financial decisions and things that maybe you wouldn't know otherwise, because there's a lot of information on the internet, there's not a lot of application help, and there's not a lot of wisdom. So we filter through a lot of those things like how much house can you afford, and help you understand it a little better so that when you make your decisions, you've got more information on that.
And then you step up from there, Scott, and go to our Money Guide program, and that is the area where people are balancing life and money. And yeah, it's hard to get started, but when you have a lot of stuff going on in your life, you've got elderly parents, you've got kids, you're trying to really try to form some life for yourself and take care of both ends of the spectrum as far as your family is concerned. And so Money Guide actually does help you to step in and get all those things on paper, on purpose, and really be able to outline your goals and be sure that you're aligning your financial actions with your goals. And that is what we've just been talking about as far as the Olympics are concerned. You've got to align your actions with your goals. If you're going to hit that gold medal, you've got to do that in the Money Guide process as well.
Someone who is kind of in that age bracket, right, of the Money Guide, I can attest to this too, is you're also getting closer to being an empty nester. So you have some opportunities where cash flow should be able to pick up if you don't make some wrong decisions, and that can accelerate your path to financial independence.
That can be a huge pivot point, Scott, when you think about the fact that, okay, you've got empty nesters and maybe, financially you've got a little breathing room at that particular point in time. What do you do with that? That is what I like to call a pivot point. It is a point in time in which you can make some decisions and really make some good progress toward financial independence.
And that's really what we're talking about today, ultimately, in this, is that there are a lot of times in an athlete who's planning for the Olympics that pivot points. We've got teenagers right now who are in Olympic refinement camps, and they're learning the craft of their sport to get stronger with the hopes of eventually earning that. I have a friend whose son is doing it for soccer. And when it comes to your finances, there are pivot points too. There are certain ages at which things change. The dynamics shift. What you have available shifts. And we're going to talk about those today. But before we even get into those, I want to be very clear about something. When I joined GenWealth, I was in my mid-30s and I had nothing set aside for retirement. So understand that if you don't fit one of these pivot points, today is your pivot point. You can make your future better than your current situation by making small steps every single day toward your goal.
So the third group that we serve is the Ready to Retire group, which is we define as 10 years or less from retirement, and we walk through the Gen Wealth Ready to Retire process with them, and that's kind of where we're going with the milestones today, is measuring them by what age you are, because they do tend to be associated, just the way the retirement game is set up or the retirement rules are set up, and they are always changing, it seems like. But here lately anyway, it seems like they stayed in place for a little while. But we're going to kind of choose these ages. Those are your time markers, right? We talked about those Olympic athletes that when they train, they're trying to make their time just a little bit better in practice so that they can get the world record during the games, right? So the milestone we're going to start with is number 50. That's your age, right? The big one there is you need to be aware that you're eligible to make catch-up contributions to your retirement plans. And if many people know this, many people don't, but there are maximums, there are caps, contribution limits to a 401k, to a traditional IRA, but the government allows you to increase that when you reach age 50.
Yeah, if you take a look at the contribution limit, it's $19,500. There's a catch-up contribution limit of $6,500 for those 50 and older. So that $6,500 can make a big difference in the compounding over time. Let's say you're going to retire at 65. So if you start at age 50, you've got 15 years for that $6,500 to compound and grow. And everything that you can do to pour on the money, and especially if age 50 coincides with when you have those empty nesters, leaving the house, and you have some financial freedom, that less obligations for kids, and maybe they've launched on their own, and you can redirect some dollars to retirement. Now's the time to really make hay while the sun shines, and the government gives you that opportunity with that extra $6,500 catch-up with a 401k plan.
And I want to repeat that again, because I think there are some people who didn't catch when that increased to begin with. That 19.5, that is fairly recent. That just increased a couple of years ago. And I've got people who've come in that thought it was still 18. Yep. So, the limit on a 401k, it's 19.5 if you're below age 50, but that catch-up contribution amount is $6,500. So you can put $26,000 a year of your own money into your plan. Then you add on top of that your employer match. Yeah. But you also get an additional amount that you can add to your IRAs. So the IRA limit is $6,000 per person, but you can add an additional $1,000 per person after you've gotten above age 50.
Yeah, you think about how big of a deal that can be. I mean, another $26,000 a year. And if you start doing it right at age 50, even if you retired at 60, $250,000 of contributions going in, not even counting the growth. So that's mile marker number one, age mile marker number one. We'll continue with the Financial Olympics as the Get Ready for the Future show continues right after this.
A game warden noticed how a particular fellow named Sam consistently caught more fish than anyone else. The successful fisherman invited the game warden to come along with him and observe. So the next morning, the two fellows met at the dock and took off in Sam's boat. When they got to the middle of the lake, Sam stopped the boat and the warden sat back to see how it was done. Sam's approach was really simple. He took out a stick of dynamite, lit it, and threw it in the air. The explosion rocked the lake with such a force that dead fish immediately began to surface. Sam took out a net and started scooping them up. Well, you can imagine the reaction of the game warden. When he recovered from the shock of it all, he began yelling at Sam. He said, "Hey, buddy, you can't do this. I'll put you in jail. You'll be paying every fine there is in the book." The game warden was just incredulous. Sam, meantime, just simply set down his net, took out another stick of dynamite. He lit it, tossed it, this time in the lap of the game warden, with these words: "Are you going to sit there all day complaining, or are you going to fish?" For some of us, the same question could be asked about our retirement. This is John Shrewsbury with Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. Whether it's trying to find the best investment or just worrying about the stock market, a lot of folks seem frozen with retirement indecision, and that very well could lead to an explosion of your own, an explosion of your dreams for a comfortable future. Plan now for your time on the lake or wherever your dreams take you.
back with more straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money on the Get Ready for the Future show.
The training and discipline it takes to get to the medal stand in the Summer Olympics can motivate us in our goal of financial independence. And we're talking about some of the mile markers today, and they're related a little bit more towards age. We talked about what happens at age 50. What milestones should you be looking to achieve? Do want to kind of double back real quickly, too. We mentioned we're talking really to the ready-to-retire folks in this show today as we talk about 50 and up, because that's where we're going to go. Certainly, you need to be aware of that even if you're still in your 30s or 40s. There's great information here. But we talked about the MoneyWorks program and the Money Guide program. Do want to let you know how you can get involved with that. You can reach out and give us a phone call if you're interested in learning more about MoneyWorks or Money Guide. Our 800 number is 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. And you can also reach out via email, info@getreadyforthefuture.com if you want to learn more about MoneyWorks or Money Guide. And as we get into the ready to retire process, we talked about age 50 in the last segment. Do want to finish up on that. We did not mention the tax advantage there to increasing that catch-up contribution as well. Many people who have been contributing to their 401ks certainly are aware that it lowers their taxable income, but there's another opportunity at age 50 to lower that even more. And when you consider you're in your highest earning years, more than likely, that can be a big advantage to do it as well in the current rather than just even thinking about long term.
And as you're becoming an empty nester, you're losing those tax benefits of those wonderful little children that you get a write-off on.
Boy, do I know that.
So increasing your contributions there instead of just pocketing all of that excess allows you to defer some of that tax there. And if you're building your Roth savings, then you're building more tax-free income for later as well. But something we did want to make sure we note is that when we say age 50, you just have to be 50 by December 31st.
Yep.
So for me, my birthday is November 30th. I can be contributing that extra all year long over the course of that year when I'm going to turn 50. I don't have to wait till after my birthday.
Did you see what she did there? She just floated out that birthday just to just a little tease out there to anybody that might want to send her a birthday present.
I'm not against that. No. You know.
We're not soliciting birthday presents for Teresa today. I wanted to mention something that as you started this segment, Scott, you mentioned the discipline that's necessary. And when people talk about discipline, a lot of people just recoil. They're like, that sounds hard. I want to really just implore you to think about this, about what you get to do, not what you have to do, because that makes all the difference in the world. I can tell you, I've been coaching people with their finances for 30 plus years now. And the mindset that you either have or don't have is very pivotal to the outcome that you're going to get. If you start it with, this drudgery thought process of, I got to do this. It's just, I got to be disciplined, and I don't get to, that budget thing is going to restrain me from really having freedom and all of that type of thing. You're not going to get there. You got to have a different mindset about that. And I think it's the same mindset, Scott, that you mentioned that an athlete has to have. They have to think about that 15 seconds of glory that they're likely to get worldwide for being a champion at the Olympics. To being a medalist at the Olympics, even if you just get to stand on the podium, and it doesn't matter what color your medal is, you still
impressive.
get that benefit. That's what they are focused on. That's what they're working for. That's what all of the sacrifice is about.
There is also a catch-up contribution to a traditional and Roth IRA. We want to mention that too. The contribution limit there before age 50 is $6,000. They will allow you, the government, to add an additional $1,000. So $7,000 total after your age 50 if you continue to contribute to a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Now, that's an aggregate total. You can't put $7,000 in each of them, but $7,000 can go to a traditional or Roth. You can split them if you want, but if you are Roth eligible, that's another thing we should mention too. If you are in those higher income earning years, you may not be eligible to contribute to a Roth, but the catch-up does apply there.
But if you're married, that's each.
Yes.
So the husband can put in up to 7, the wife can put in up to 7. Even if one of them is staying home, not working, as long as there's earned income to cover it, you can do that as well.
All right, so our next age milestone to kind of measure where you are in financial independence or on your journey towards the gold medal stand, if you will, to keep the Olympic tie in, is age 55. This one's important, especially for people who are considering retiring early, because so many of the retirement accounts have that 59.5 tag to it. In other words, you're not eligible to take a distribution without penalty until you're age 59 and a half. That works for IRAs. That works for most retirement accounts. But if you're leaving your employer and you leave the money in your 401k or leave enough money in your 401k to bridge the gap to age 59 and a half, you can actually take that without the 10% penalty. Still going to be taxed if it was a pre-tax contribution, but you can avoid a 10% penalty by knowing where to withdraw your funds from.
I don't know if this is totally an outgrowth of the COVID pandemic or what, but I'm hearing more people mentioning that they want to retire at 55 as opposed to 60 or 65 or whatever the case may be. And let me just say that is a call for even more discipline, because when you think about the dynamic of retirement income planning, you've got to be able to stretch a certain amount of money over a longer period of time. And I can tell you from working with this for so long that if you just move the needle by 2 or 3 years, it puts a significant strain on the amount of money that you have. So you got to have more money to be able to retire at 55 than you do at 65. I think that's obviously clear, because you've got to be able to cover that 10 years of income. But the other thing that you got to think about is inflation during that time, and being able to adjust that over a longer period of time.
Yes, because you've got to keep your buying power. It's not just about the dollars you take home. It's how you make those dollars work for your day-to-day budget. And when you're looking at your typical retiree, if they're retiring in their 60s, they're looking at 30 years. So if you're retiring in your 50s, not only do you not have the cost-effective Medicare, I say cost-effective loosely, Medicare access, you've got a long period of time where you're going to pay for your health care on your own, but you've also got a longer period of inflation, which means the impact is going to be greater. So if that's something you're wanting to do, you're going to have to be even more disciplined on the front end to make sure you're keeping your debts low and you're really knocking out the savings on the way. But there are also some caveats to this rule. So we want to make sure we're clear about that. When we say that you can pull penalty-free from your previous employer, we mean the last person you worked for, and only if you're fully retired. So you can't leave an employer at 55, go do something different, and be able to pull from that prior employer. That's not how this works.
Yeah, it's got to be a full retirement type thing, and it doesn't include a past employer's retirement program. Let me say also that just because it's legal doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Again, you've got to run the numbers and see if it is something that you can really sustain over that longer period of time, because, as we said, you've got to stretch that money over time. The inflation factor is a factor there. Age 55 retirement sounds great, but again, you've got to employ the discipline early on to be able to make that happen.
Yeah, and if that's you, if you're thinking about retiring at age 55 or somewhere in your late 50s and you don't have a written retirement income plan intact, I would invite you to give us a call. You can call us toll free at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526, or reach out via email. Just send that email to info@getreadyforthefuture.com. That's what we do every day at Gen Wealth, build retirement income plans for people who are entering their financial independence phase of life. So if you've got that accumulated savings in that 401k and you don't know if it's going to be enough, and let's be honest, most people don't without a plan. I'd say all people don't without a plan. It's just kind of a guess without the plan. Then get a retirement income plan built, and we can do that for you. One other thing I want to mention, too, while we're talking about leaving employers, severing employment at age 55, if you do go to another job, then you have some other options there with the 401k, and we want to talk a little bit about that, but we also want to tell you about, if you want to know those options, we call them orphan 401ks, these 401ks that have been left behind for sometimes years, maybe even decades, that people even forget about it. So this really applies to anybody. This is not just an age of 55. This is if you left a job at 27 and now you're 55 and you don't even remember what's in that. We can help you figure that out and also go over your options with you. We did a fastest 4 minutes in finance on the options you have when you leave an employer, what to do with that 401k. If you haven't signed up for the fastest 4, you can do that by texting the word FAST to 501-381-5228. Again, 501-381-5228. The fastest 4 minutes in finance is a bit of a spinoff series. It used to be on the Get Ready for the Future show. We needed that extra 4 minutes of time because of the radio formatting with different radio affiliates we had. We no longer need that, so we don't do it on the show, but we are now sending it direct to your email inbox. So if you text the word FAST to that number, 501-381-5228, you'll get that once a week. And last week's Fastest 4 was about what to do with an orphan 401k.
Yeah, and I think that just as an encouragement to you, that the Fastest Four is one of the elements that we use here at GenWealth to help you to really educate yourself about what's going on in the world of finance. We may be talking about the markets. We may be talking about rolling over a 401k plan. There's a lot of different subjects out there, but we wanted to give you something that was just very quick burst, 4 minutes of your time, and you can get that information ingested in a way that you can actually use it. And then obviously you can actually reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like to implement some of the things that I've been hearing about on the Fastest Four. And you can certainly do that by reaching out to us here at GenWealth Financial Advisors. Go to getreadyforthefuture.com and click the appointment button there, or you can just give us a call at 866-653-PLAN.
Financial Olympics going for the gold, using the discipline and sacrifice that athletes endure to get to the medal stand, to motivate us to get to the financial independence medal stand in life. We're up to age 59 and a half, and that kind of bridges from what we were talking about with orphan 401ks, because a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to sever employment if you reach 59 and a half and you are still working at your employer. In most cases, not all 401k plans offer this, but the large majority of them do offer what's called an in-service distribution. And 59 and a half is that magic number when it comes to retirement, but it becomes very important if you're planning, even if you're not going to retire at 59 and a half, you're still going to work. It gives you a great opportunity to do some planning and make some decisions with that money.
Most employer plans are accumulation vehicles. They're not made for distribution, which is why this exists, so that as you're nearing retirement, you can get your income plan kind of initiated and kind of part funded so that you're getting a head start. You know, if you're going to retire, nobody controls what the market's going to do. And if you retired into a bad year and you weren't ready, that can be something that just totally derails you. But if you take this opportunity when you have it to do that 59 and a half distribution, and you get to do it once a year going forward to be able to keep funding that, then you can work your way towards that where it's not as impactful if the market has a dip in the year that you retired.
Scott, we make the analogy that going from working to retirement is like shifting from one season to the other in sports. And since we're talking about sports and the Olympics, let's talk about these two sport athletes, especially between football and basketball. You'll see that happen sometimes where a football player plays football, but toward the end of the season, he kind of fades out of the football game and begins to train for basketball because basketball is a completely different discipline. And when you think about the 59 and a half rule, that is an opportunity for you to begin to prepare your retirement for the transition, for the thing that you're going to go to, which is taking income. And it's a completely different paradigm than building up money in your 401k plan. To be able to do a 59 and a half withdrawal, you're able to actually continue contributing to your 401k plan as you're working, but you are also able to then take the corpus of that money, the lump sum of that money, and do something completely different with it and get it aligned with a retirement income strategy.
And rolling it over to an IRA is not a taxable event, so
Correct.
Everything stays pre-tax dollars, and the withdrawal process once it's in an IRA would be the same as if you were pulling it from the 401k because you've reached 59 and a half. It would just be taxed at ordinary income tax rates. Measuring milestones, the Financial Olympics. That's the subject of today's Get Ready for the Future show. Back in a moment.
At GenWealth, one of our standards is that we're life changers. We believe one of the best ways to change your life is to educate yourself. George Washington Carver said that education is the key that unlocks the golden door of freedom. Let that soak in for just a moment. Think about the changes that you can make by learning more, specifically learning more about your money. We are passionate about education. We believe that it has the potential to change not only one life, but generations to come.
There's always been power in standing up for what you believe in, challenging the status quo, and never accepting the ordinary. What about the rest of your life? Will you settle? Or will your retirement be more? More fun, more family than finances, more than just investments. Connect with us at GenWealth and harness the power of more. Have a burning question? Email info@getreadyforthefuture.com with your name, location, and question to get a response on the air from the Gen Wealth team. Now, back to the Get Ready for the Future show.
Welcome back. Inspired by the Summer Olympics, we're talking about the Financial Olympics, maybe motivating us to be better disciplined and sacrifice a little more so that we make sure we reach financial independence. That is the medal stand in life for us. And there's a really easy way we offer, too, to check up on where you are. If you want to check on that milestone, we have the 15-minute retirement for you. You can text the word checkup to 501-381-5228. Again, that's our number for to receive a lot of resources from Gen Wealth, 501-381-5228. And if you text the word checkup, you'll be able to go through the 15-minute retirement process. It takes less time than it does to check your social media. Just spend a little time and give you a bird's eye view. It is certainly not a very comprehensive view, but it gives you a good idea of where you are. It's a good milestone for you on your path to financial independence. We are using milestones today that are a little more connected to ages. So we're talking about people who are getting closer to retirement. We talked about age 50, what to look for there, age 55 and 59 and a half. We're up to age 62 now. And the reason that's important, it is the minimum age at which you can choose to begin receiving Social Security retirement benefits. You are eligible now to receive a benefit, but of course it is at a lower amount than if you reached your full retirement age, which that full retirement age varies a little bit, but for most people now it's 67. And it is not the largest benefit that you could receive. That's another thing we can get into, that sometimes people think full retirement age means that's the biggest benefit we're going to get, but it actually grows if you defer it to age 70. But sometimes health can choose us to need to go ahead and retire. Maybe you just want to go ahead and retire at 62. Decisions about when to take your Social Security benefit are very key when you're trying to measure your path to financial independence.
Scott, there is a ton of misconceptions around this in terms of when I should take my Social Security. I have people call me and say, hey, I'm turning 62. Do I need to take my Social Security? Well, they're still working and they don't need the money. And it would just add to their taxable income if they took the money. But there's this underlying thought process that the government's going to run out of money and they're going to stop paying me a check, so I need to get mine as much as I can, as quickly as I can. And that's just a falsehood. That is not how this is actually going to play out as far as Social Security is concerned. Look, Social Security is run by a trust fund, and that trust fund does have a depletion thing going on with it, but that doesn't mean that they're going to run out of money and stop paying benefits. I think that Congress, this is a long story that we've talked about a lot on this show, but Congress will eventually do the right thing and make sure that Social Security arrives intact with you. Now, they may make some tweaks to it and things of that nature, but it really is not a decision that needs to be made based on whether the government's going to have any money or not, because they've got the printing press. They'll have money. But the question really is, Teresa, what does it mean to your retirement income plan? And that's where it becomes a lot of really intricate math that you've got to go through to understand when the right time to take is.
Yes, I think another misnomer related to that is many people say, well, I'm retiring at this age, so I'm going to take Social Security immediately. And that's not always the case. It's a part of the puzzle that is your personal retirement income plan, but it's only one piece, and it's an impactful piece. So we need to make sure we get it right. And there are a ton of different claiming strategies that can be employed. Part of our Ready to Retire process is that we look at it from a bunch of different angles. If we change it to this age, what does it do to the overall plan? And look at the different impacts and help you decide which one makes the most sense for you and your family with your unique goals.
Yeah, there are scenarios that we run in just on Social Security to say, should we take it at 62? Should we take it at 63? Should we take it at 67? Should we take it at various ages to test whether that has an impact on your overall retirement thing? I want everybody to really understand this. Social Security enables the money that you've saved for retirement to last longer.
Yes.
And so that's the test that we're looking at. How much impact does it have on the longevity of your money, how you take that Social Security benefit?
I think it's important, too, to point out that it is much more valuable even still when you're talking about two people. And oftentimes we're working with a couple, right? So it's not really just about when you claim your benefit. It's how that's going to impact your spouse's benefit as well. And John, you mentioned people continuing to work and wanting to know if they should take their Social Security benefit at 62, obviously you got to watch the income limits there. That can reduce your benefits until you reach full retirement age, and that is a very restrictive income limit too. I think it's around $19,000, maybe closer to 20 now, and it does go up, but it doesn't go up much. So in other words, if you're going to continue to earn income, and it's over $20,000, you're going to get dinged on that benefit if you're taking it.
Let's talk also about something else that comes along in this time period, if you will, related to the government, not related necessarily directly to Social Security, but that is Medicare. At 65, you've got to deal with the Medicare issue because Medicare actually penalizes you if you don't sign up for Medicare at a particular time.
So at age 65, it's really important as you're approaching age 65, which is our next milestone, that you get at least Part A on time, because that penalty is permanent. So if you wait past your what's called your open enrollment, first of all, you're not going to be eligible till the next open enrollment, but you're also going to have a permanent penalty on your premiums going forward.
Yeah,
so that can be impactful.
That can be a 10% surcharge on Part B premiums. And you work with your advisor to save a lifetime of money. And then you don't want to have to funnel some of that away to a penalty that is permanent as it relates to your health care. Health care is expensive enough. We have lots of cost of health care in retirement. You don't need an extra penalty for you by missing that age 65 sign up for Medicare.
And Medicare Part A is your primary insurer at age 65. Whether you have insurance through your employer, if you're in a group plan or not, Part A is required at 65. Part B can be delayed, but make sure you do the paperwork so they understand that you have a group plan that's taking care of that part for you until you're ready to retire. And then 3 to 6 months before you fully retire, start looking into the Part B and the other supplements. But make sure you've got Part A at 65 to protect you from having some gap in coverage.
I'm going to ask you guys to survey all the appointments that we've had, let's just say in the last year, but maybe even over a longer period of time. What's the most common retirement age that we get if we ask someone, when do you want to retire?
65.
It's right here, right?
65.
And that's why. It's the Medicare thing. This health insurance thing is a big deal because if you retire before 65, you've got to figure out how you're going to be covered. And there are not too many number of companies anymore that provide continuing health care coverage. If you have a public job, you may have the option to carry that through all of retirement. If you have a private job, you may be able to extend your group benefits for a limited time through COBRA, but you'll have to pay the full cost. So health insurance premiums are going to go up for a time if you're prior to age 65 and not eligible for Medicare. And that, I think, goes back to why building a retirement income plan is so important. You need to know what those costs are going to be. We talk about required income all the time with our clients, and sometimes they know what their expenses are now, but they need help figuring out what they're going to be in retirement.
Well, and let's kind of divert from all the technical things that we're talking about here for just a second, and let's talk about the psychology of retirement for a second, because I will turn 61 this year. I'm beginning to think about, okay, what does retirement look like, and what am I going to do with myself, and all of that type of thing. Those are serious questions, folks. You've got to really think about what life looks like on the other side. And you may be going, I got plenty to do. It's going to keep me busy and all of this type of thing. But you could be going, I don't know who I am past my job. And so those are things that I think that you've really got to spend this time period, maybe in the 60s or so, beginning to think about what life looks like. Teresa, we talk to people about work-tirement and doing a phased-in retirement. I think that really does resonate with a lot of people.
Yes, I think the studies have shown us people need purpose. And when you're working, often that becomes a lot of what your purpose is. If you've got a family at home, that may be a big part of your purpose, what gets you up daily. But even in retirement, you need a purpose. We tell people all the time, you have to retire to something, not from something, because the things that get you up in the morning, that's what's really going to make you have joy. You've got to stay connected to people. You've got to stay connected to what drives you. And whether that's volunteer or a work retirement, which, being completely blunt, is what I'm planning on. I'm not the type of person that I could go home and stay home. But whatever drives you, make sure you're planning ahead for that and using those pre-retirement years to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think that clearly having a plan is better than going, I'll just figure it out when I get there, because psychologically that hits you really hard when your life changes and you're not ready for it. And so clearly it's something that you've got to think through. Where do I want to live? What do I want to do? Do I want to continue to work? And a lot of people, have this kind of idea of I'll work till I die. Well, I wouldn't count on that either,
right?
Because healthcare issues come up, especially in your 60s. You've got to be doing some things to be able to sustain, especially if you have a job that is, some sort of manual labor or something like that. Bodies wear out. And so you've got to think about those things in this time period.
The Olympic athletes don't continue to compete past their 30s, right?
Yes.
I mean, they can't do it at that level for very long. I share a quick story about work-tirement. I was in my dentist chair getting my teeth cleaned earlier this week, and my dentist told me that he's retiring in about a year.
No.
I did not know. He's a very fit guy, looks great. He's 74 years old.
Wow.
And he's just now retiring, right? So in my mind, I started asking him questions, and when I could talk, with everything in my mouth, when he took something out for a minute. But I asked him, I said, well, you know what you're going to do in retirement? He said, same thing I've been doing. And I didn't even realize this, but he'd only been working 3 days a week for a decade.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So he considered himself semi-retired already. So it's not going to be much of a transition for him to fully back away.
Yeah, and I think that works best for a lot of people that I've worked with over the years as they fade into retirement, if you will.
Instead
it's
of
not,
a hard stop.
Yeah, it's not that hard stop, not that sudden change that really is a shock to your system, both physically and mentally. And some people are wired differently. They're like, when I'm done, I'm done. I'm going to the house. I'm sitting on my butt and watching TV or whatever the case may be. And that's fine if that's your thing. I just want you to be prepared for it because retirement is coming.
Yeah, and retirement income plan, we can fold that in as well, a projected amount of part-time income, but for a certain amount of time. Those are all parts of the written retirement plan that we put together for our clients as part of the GenWealth Ready to Retire process. To get started through that process, you can reach out toll-free 866-653-PLAN, 866-653-7526, or just email us info@getreadyforthefuture.com. So we're up to age 66, and this one's going to be rather short because there aren't that many folks probably still descending into this. But we mentioned the full retirement age for Social Security. For most people, it's 67. But if you were born between 1943 and 1954 and you're not retired yet, age 66 is your full retirement age for Social Security. So you have likely passed it, obviously, right? The math works there.
It's kind of working its way through it. There's 66 in 2 months,
Yes.
66 in 4 months. So it kind of works its way up to 67 from there.
So you do need to know your full retirement age because that is when your full benefit arrives. But again, like we referred to earlier in the show, that's not the biggest benefit. It is just the full retirement. Leave it to the government, right?
Yeah,
Full
I was about to
retirement
say.
benefit.
Only the government could screw up the meaning of the word "full." So
It's very subjective.
But I think that if we can emphasize one thing about this whole Social Security discussion, it depends on what you're doing as far as your overall retirement income plan is concerned. So be careful about making some just cookie cutter judgment about when you want to take Social Security. Sit down with your financial advisor, go through your retirement income plan, understand the impact of that Social Security decision on the rest of your money.
Financial Olympics. That's the theme of today's show, taking some inspiration from our Summer Olympic athletes and the training and the sacrifice that they endure to get to the medal stand. Our medal stand is financial independence, and we're talking about some milestones to check along the way. Back in a moment.
The beauty of a potter's work is that each item is unique. No piece is the same. That's what makes it art. At GenWealth, we believe your financial plan should be unique to you. Through our process, your money is carefully shaped around your goals and dreams. Your future, artfully crafted. Call us today or visit our website and connect with us. GenWealth Financial Advisors.
smarter, simpler, more personal approach to retirement continues with the Get Ready for the Future show.
Education-driven, strategy-based, team-delivered. That is the Gen Wealth difference. And we're talking today about the inspiration of the Summer Olympic athletes and how they can inspire us to reach our own medal stand of financial independence. And we talked about earlier in the broadcast how they have those times, right, in the sports like swimming where they're trying to beat a time every time they go out and work harder and just shave some time off of their performance. The same is true in your retirement. There are some milestones along the way before you reach the actual closing in of retirement that you can make some checklists there and things you can do to accelerate that timeline towards financial independence. And we've broken them down by age. We talked about age 50, 55, 59 and a half, 62, 65, and up to 66. So now in this final segment, we're getting to age 70. Okay, so we're going to go back to Social Security in the talk here. We mentioned that the full retirement age benefit is not the biggest benefit you receive. If you wait until you're 70 to begin taking Social Security, that is the maximum amount that Social Security will give you. And it goes back to a lot of factors, the Social Security analysis, what your spouse's Social Security income when it comes to figuring out when to take your benefit. But we do have a chart here that we're going to show you, the break-even analysis of choosing the earliest that you can take Social Security, which is age 62. We are comparing it to age 66 and then age 70, and it usually ends up being about the same break point. It's around age 80. You know, on this graph, it looks like it's right before age 80, and it does vary some depending on your personal situation. But this is all based on, really, the benefit here is how long are you going to live? And most people don't think, I would say my experience is, guys, that they don't think they're going to live to age 80. Most people don't. So many people come in thinking they're going to want to take it early because they'll never see
never hit that break-even
point.
Well, and the other way to think about this is that if you live beyond 80, then delaying your Social Security is actually more financially beneficial to you than it would be otherwise. Yeah. But again, I think that playing this game about how much money I'm going to get from the Social Security system is the wrong question.
Yeah.
The right question is, what is Social Security? I'll get this out in a minute. Social Security. What is Social Security going to do for me in terms of making my money last as long as it possibly can in retirement? And that's the real pivot point on Social Security that you got to be looking at.
When you're thinking about retiring and retirement and trying to time it, your income has to be the driving force, not Social Security.
Yes.
Because if you've got the assets to produce the income you need, then just retire and enjoy your retirement. Don't worry about all that other stuff that you're worried about. I think it's important that you understand that you focus on the right thing. You know, if I'm an Olympic swimmer and I'm worried about what it's like to run on flat land, that's not helping me. So the retirement game is more focused on income, and Social Security is a piece of it, but it is just a piece. So that's why it's important to get with your financial advisor and have that plan in place that considers it and in light of all of your other pieces too.
Scott, I can't let this go. Teresa has kind of alluded to being focused on the right thing as opposed to the wrong thing. Throughout any time that you're planning for retirement, if your focus is on, let's say, rate of return on your investments, then you're focused on the wrong thing.
Yes.
It's not about rate of return. It is about, are you moving forward toward your goals? Now, rate of return has an effect on that, and certainly you don't want a very low rate of return, but it's not that you've got to hit 20% every year. One of the things I'm really kind of worked up about right now about what the market is doing right now, because the market returns have been spectacular. And anytime I sit down with a client when we're doing an annual review these days, I go, look, this too shall pass.
Yes.
This will go away. You will not, don't expect this next year. Don't set up yourself for failure by expecting that you're going to get a 20%, 25, 30% return on your investments every year.
Rate of return is a component, and it is a big component to the overall plan, but it's not the goal.
Right.
And I think that's the way we describe it, is we're outcome-based. You want the success. You want to reach the medal stand, to use our Olympic terminology. You want financial independence. That's outcome-based planning. Certainly, you need those rates of return for your investments to produce the income you need for that successful retirement, but people do tend to get too focused and make that the main thing, and that is losing focus for sure. All right, so our final age used to be 70.5, and there actually is something we can use for 70.5 because something didn't change. But the required minimum distribution rules have recently changed. It used to be 70.5 when you reached, or the year you reached 70.5, you had to begin taking distributions from your IRA or your 401k.
And specifically the pre-tax ones. Let's
pre-tax
be very careful
ones.
to make sure we clarify that.
The rules have changed recently due to Congress enacting, I'm going to draw a blank on the Secure Act, was it the Secure Act? Yes, the Secure Act changed it. They've had so many, the CARES Act, the Security Act.
There's been so many in a row.
The Secures Act changed the RMD to 72. So now, as of January 2020, you must begin taking RMD starting at age 72. You may defer your first RMD until April 1st in the year after you turn age 72, but then you're required to take 2 distributions that year, so it's probably not advisable to do that. Now, the one thing we should point out, too, that 70.5 still exists for is they did not change the rules with the QCD, the Qualified Charitable Distribution. So you can actually still take those at 70.5, and what that is basically if you want to make a charitable contribution with your RMD, then you can make that without it being taxable if it goes directly to the institution.
And that's a huge tool, especially if you have a larger asset base that you're trying to help your tax situation, because you're required to take that distribution for your RMD, so it's taxable to you. But if you instead defer that to a charity that is a 501c3 charity, it's not taxable to you that year. It's also tax-free to them, so it really extends your dollars. The alternative would be you take your required distribution home, you pay taxes on it, and then you're using net dollars to donate. So it's really beneficial when you're old enough to do that, especially if you don't need that money for yourself, to do that instead and help your tax situation.
The government is the king of complexity too, and and when you think about how complex these things are, it even gets more complex if you have an employer plan and you're still working, let's say at 72, but you have an IRA. And so you are required to take your RMD from your IRA, but if you're still working, you're not required to take an RMD from your 401k plan. So, again, it is one of those things that you got to have, a guide to get through this menagerie of just stuff that's out there.
Well, and let's talk about that penalty.
Because if you get it wrong, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there you go. The penalty is 50% of what you should have taken. So if you mess up and think, oh, I'm still working, I don't have to take an RMD, but you have that IRA sitting out there, you could get hit with that 50% penalty as a result of not taking the RMD from the IRA account.
It may change again, by the way, the RMD rules.
Yes.
Secure Act 2.0 is working its way through Congress, and they could raise it to 74, and it actually may be different based on your date of birth, right? So they're really making it even more complex.
I wonder if this is a novel idea. Nobody's probably ever thought about this in Washington. Why don't they ask the people that are in the retirement income industry how to structure this and do it one time, be done with it, quit changing the rules?
Yeah,
is that a possibility?
Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
Okay. I just thought I'd editorialize there for a moment.
Now, where these RMDs come into play, I think we should point out, too, is most of the time our clients, I would say, are taking distributions from qualified accounts prior to the RMD age if they're retired. But if for some reason your Social Security and pension is enough and you're not taking money, additional money, then these strategies come into play. And then also, if you have a lot of non-qualified money, it can help steer how you develop your retirement income plan, right? If you have non-qualified money that can bridge the gap, and you may want to take the qualified money first, though, because you may want to start lowering the base so that the required minimum distribution is less.
Another thing to touch base back on that qualified distribution, the charitable ones, your taxable income drives your Medicare premiums in retirement, in case you didn't know this. So if you have the opportunity to defer that income to someone else, that also helps limit the impact of your required distributions on your Medicare premiums. Because if you're forced to take income that you don't need and then it increases your Medicare premiums, that's like a double whammy to me. So if you have the ability to do those, that's another way that it may help you.
It also can affect how you take those distributions from your retirement accounts based on the changes in the rules of the inherited IRA, too, which we've talked about. As it transfers to the next generation, your children are going to have to take that money out in a 10-year time frame rather than being able to stretch that over the course of their lives. Man.
Beautiful timing.
How did you do that?
The bell, right as I finished a sentence, that is the bell
you
signaling.
have paid Casey to time that on your last word. I'm just absolutely sure.
He's always listening. It is time for our final thoughts, and Teresa, we'll start with you.
Having an advocate is huge. There are a lot of dates we've talked about today, and there are a lot of things that you can do to work towards your goals. But having somebody coaching you and helping you through those so you don't have to memorize them is a great tool also. So I'd encourage you to reach out to your financial advisor and make sure that you guys are tracking your deadlines and your kind of pivot points so that you're ready when the time is right.
Scott, I would say that clearly the mindset that you have about retirement is going to dictate whether you get to that medal stand or not, whether you get to that spot where you can claim financial independence. Financial independence is elusive. It is something that is different to every person, and that makes it maybe a little bit easier to attain because maybe your goal is not somebody else's goal. But the constant here is discipline and having a plan on paper, on purpose, checking up on that plan on a regular basis. That is the true path to financial independence. And hopefully you've seen some things through the show today that will help you down that path.
My final thought is we've talked about those Olympic athletes and their immense talent and their sacrifice and their discipline. What we haven't said is they all have coaches. They all have people motivating them. I think of the swimming coach for Australia, if you've seen that video, where he really gets into he's celebrating the victory, right, of his swimmer. You need somebody in your corner, not only with the expertise and the advice giving, but also the motivation and the cheerleading that goes along with you getting to the medal stand, which is reaching financial independence. And if you'd like to take the first step in doing that, in hiring a coach, that's what we see ourselves as here at Gen Wealth. You can call us at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. That's all the time we have for this week's show. We'll talk to you again next week.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas-registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.